it's Ari, and guess what? I got pretty far into reading before I realized that my mic was off. I don't know how I keep turning off my mic, but it's not something I can notice. You know, you have to click it, like audible click, for it to go on and off. And I'm managing to turn it on and off without noticing. Because I'm awesome like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, sure. So you're gonna miss some parts of me updating the blog, but not that much. Okay. So here we go. Actually, put you back on top. Here we go. Detrot, Starlight Over Detrot by Chessie, Chapter 17. Meet the Gang. Now, congratulations on your departmental purchase, Hampton Sons, acquisition back market smuggling of a Minotaur's MK 12 gauge saddle mounted semi automatic shotgun. Treat your weapon well, and it'll provide you with years of service of maiming on demand. Treat it poorly, and there are a few documented cases where these weapons have sought revenge. The MK can be equipped with a variety of optional features, including ghost ring sighting, anti-telekinetic trigger guards, filigree styling. It is best used in close quarters or against fast-moving aerial targets. It is capable of stopping a berserking griffin even after you have insulted their progenitors. However you say that. Do not store it loaded, especially not with any form of magical rounds. They may get up to mischief. Given the proximity of the barrel to the pony's ear, always wear protection when using this weapon. Keep out of reach of foes. Do not to be used for ballistic distribution of party favors. Not to be used for ballistic distribution of party guests. This is a highly ineffective way of making cupcakes. Though we appreciate the business, do not stash all over town in case of shotgun emergency. This has been the instruction manual of the Minotaur's MK2 12 gauge saddle mounted semi automatic shotgun. Hi. I think it better be a deposit. No. Okay. Yeah, who cares? Oh, it's Wednesday, so paying our hotel bill at the high seas quickly embedded itself in my brain is one of those memories you call up in the middle of the night to your lampshade yourself when sleep just won't come. The concierge didn't even bother to fake a smile as Taxi handed her the room keys. Her facial expression resembled a pinched goldfish as she pushed the freshly shined and polished wooden box across the front desk and into my waiting legs. I picked it up, putting my ear to the top. It was probably my overactive imagination, but the faint beat of the organ inside sounded vaguely apologetic, explaining why we had left a still juicy and apparently very excitable pony heart in the car. An explanation that included the badge and the words "need to know" basis far too many times to earn the trust of the not reasonably wary staff was only half so awkward as when we passed the employee lounge to find the valet sobbing into a veggie hoagie in the corner. Taxi, being Taxi, made to go comfort him, and he very nearly stuffed himself in the refrigerator trying to get away from her. In the end, our retreat from the Villa High Seas was less than graceful, but it didn't matter. I'd rested and showered, and while I did still smell like cheap shampoo, I was feeling measurably more like myself. The heart wedged into my breast pocket squirmed and jumped occasionally, and while I'm ascribing enchanted organ emotions, it seemed enthusiastic about being out for a walk. One of the other valets, not one that my dauntlessness had traumatized for life, pulled the car around, dropped the keys in the taxi's hoof, and held out his hat expectantly. I tossed him a half a dozen bits, and he frowned. I threw in 6 more, and he rewarded me with a polite sniff, slapping his cap back on his head with the soft jingle of currency. Yeah. Luna's Mooney End. Or Luna's Mooney Tail End. I hate these places. After briefly consulting a map of the city to find Scarlett's hidey hole and lay down the best route, we piled Scarlett, Swift, and me and myself into the back of the night trotter. Taxi slid behind the wheel and started the engine and lit some especially nasty incense. Long years of acquaintance were giving me vibrations of trouble in paradise from my driver. I couldn't tell if it was an actual disturbance in her emotional state, but she was definitely hiding something. I tried to catch her eye in the mirror, but she quickly glanced away, covering the evasion with a burst of speed and noise from the engine. My partner was using Scarlet for a cushion, one huge wing draped over him, while the other became a makeshift blanket. I was grateful she opted to sit between us, if only because I didn't fancy any more little incidents that might involve the need for kinetic demonstration of my disinterest in him getting under my tail, or vice versa. For his part, the red stallion appeared to just be relaxing, but every now and then I caught him peeking at me out of one of his lidded eyes. We turned into the early evening traffic, and just as the sun dropped low enough under the cloud to cover up the streets with a vivid amber glow, it seemed like the whole city was holding its breath, as though it would see the violence about to ensue. While Taxi had neglected to mention what sort of magical contamination might be at our final destination, it was a good bet that any building condemned for severe enchantment was likely to make our assault an interesting affair. There was a few possible reasons the city might not have been willing to pick up the tab for the cleanup or demolition. The work might have been very dangerous, very costly, impossible, or, some combination of all 3. Buildings left to rot and Detrot tended to become havens for criminals, and space was at a premium. Sunny Days Foster Care Facility was therefore a rarity, and smart ponies are rare. Mother of pearl. I was doing so good reading that. I know what it means, bro. pounds. Yeah, oh, there we go. That's what I want. Wary. That does not sound right. But then again, the way I talk in my head is much different than how I talk out loud. And smart pony is wary of going into any potential combat situation without enough information. These characters the dragons were lending me was another unknown, and the most I could get from Scarlet was that they were skilled. The wide range of distressing things that might have meant wasn't helping my blood pressure any. Whereas Taxi was slowly expanding, the enthusiasm for the job was starting to make my mane prickle. Since she left the Sorry, distracted. Since she left the forest, getting her into a crime scene wasn't hard, but the actual policing of criminals was one line she barely was willing to cross without considerable bribery. Something about Cosmo was changing that. I realized then I just assumed she'd be joining us for the assault. When I brought up the number of ponies going along my conversation with Scarlet, she'd done nothing to dissuade me of that idea. She'd once been an extremely competent cop, aside from her total disregard for procedure and desperately poor marksmanship. I was glad to have her along, but we were going to have to sit down and have one of our little talks about why she was so interested in Ruby's case. 15 minutes later, we were pulling up to Scarlet's Vivarium access just inside the line of slightly nicer houses on the height's outermost borders. There were a few ponies and various other beatings hanging around under street lamps, but they were all well dressed and none looked to be working. I couldn't describe my relief when I saw where we were going. It wasn't a public sex dungeon or a seedy porn shop. There wasn't any semen stains on the sidewalk or the overpowered mess of sweaty, heated bodies you could taste from a block away. It was a coffee shop, simple, friendly, and familiar. The sign over the glass door was stenciled in letters, and a little picture of a steaming cup beside it. Darling Morning's Brew. It's that sandwich on the end of a row of shops, just off the main thoroughfare. A whiff of fresh baked bread tantalized my nose, and I decided that no matter what sort of terrible adventure we might be walking into, I wasn't going to do it on an empty stomach, nor was I going to do it uncaffeinated. With a yawn and a big stretch, Swift raised her head and sniffed the air. What smells so good? Scarlet pulled himself up on the back seat with some full body yoga that involved far more butt wiggling than was probably necessary. We're here. Oh man, I hope Edna didn't make a scene. Darling still won't sell anything with meat in it. Meat. I'm guessing Edna's or Griffin. I asked, pushing the car door open and stepping out into the sidewalk. The scent of toasting bread was even stronger outside. That's right, bit eccentric, but she's very good at what she does. Don't let her scare you. She's only half as crazy as she sounds. Scarlet thought briefly and then added, Okay, exactly half as crazy, come to think of it. Just don't mention her height or she will hurt you. I'll remember that. What about the others? Tapping his chin with one rubberized hoof, the secretary considered his reply. Let me see. The Tontalari twins are a bit on the quiet side. They both used to play hoofball for the Detrot Manicores. I don't really know them personally. They tend to prefer to work out of the house when they're not on guard duty. I do know their specialty is matronism and submission. And some pony, some pony who wants to work out stress. They make really good punching bags, apparently. Funny thing, I've never actually seen them injured. Should they have been? shutting the door as Swift and Scarlet stepped out on the other side. If someone's hitting you in the face with a hammer, typically yes. That brought me up short. I raised one eyebrow, squinted at him, and then decided that this was not the line of inquiry I wished to pursue at the moment. What about this zebra? Oh, Mistress Zeta, she is. Scarlet bit his lip, trying to find the words. She's very unusual. You may find her a kindred spirit, Miss Taxi. At that, my driver's ears perked up. Really? You and she share a certain Joe DeVere. He trolled his hip in a the circle but before he could carry his comparison any further, he was derailed, presumably by the audible gurgle in his stomach. His mind followed. Oh. Wonder if Darling made bagels this morning. The heart in the box beat just a little faster against my breast, and I couldn't help but agree. Scarlet had said the magic word. Bagels? A little bell announced us as I pushed open the coffee shop's front door and let my companions into a whole world of wonderful sights and smells. Darling couldn't have been more inviting if the counter was made of solid gold. As it was, I just had to stand there for a few seconds, taking in the ambience. The cafe was dotted with sagging, lightly coffee-stained sofa and armchairs which looked to have been looted from a thrift shop, reminding me of good friends gathered around a bar to exchange gossip after a hard day's work. Every wall was covered in shockingly poor local art that may have been surreal interpretations of a sewer crawling or possibly bowls of ground meat. The floor was made of bare stone and tile, of the sort that was easy to wash with a hose if the owner was feeling ambitious. The shaggy Maine professor in a threadbare vest crouched over a stack of ungraded tests on one private table, slurping a cup of piping hot tea, while a doe-eyed unicorn with a badly dyed mane and about 24 piercings tried to peck out the next great equestrian novel on a typewriter at a booth. The long counter was plastered with crusty, yellowed news articles about the shop. Behind it, a fat, smiling buck with a bizarre malted of quart of the color of blue cheese was taking an entire row of bagels out of the wall-sized brick oven, slapping them onto the tray beside the register. My tongue felt like it melted in my mouth. I wanted bagels. I needed bagels. I pulled my hat off and breathed deep, filling my lungs until I was lightheaded. The barista straightened the row of scaldingly hot bread rings and grinned as he recognized me and the hallmarks of an enthusiastic patron. Welcome to Darlin's, Detective, he called out. I'm Darlin Brew, and we've been expecting you. I had to stop myself from running to the counter like an overeager fool in a candy store, which I managed to do just long enough to wonder, wait, he knew I was coming? Darling showed off his cutie mark with a turn to the side. Upon seeing the bowl of batter and a bullwhip dangling over one side, I froze my brain right there. Unless directly related to the case, I have long since learned not to ponder nor ask ponies how they got their cutie marks. The answer often ruined my appetite, and I wasn't about to wreck the one I had. Okay. I used to work for Miss Stella, he called ahead. Darling waved to Stella's secretary, who came in behind me with swift and taxi fast on his heels, noses up high. He said the police pony who was bringing Scarlet was to be given top tier treatment and all the bagels he could eat. If that generous lizard had been in that little coffee shop at the moment, I probably would have given him a very public and an extremely unwise show of affection. We're waiting on 4 others. Could you let us know if they arrive? I requested, pulling my tie a bit looser. Oh, 2 of them are already here, in the back. The stilettos use my employee lounge sometimes when they need a planning space outside the club. Can I get the 3 of you something to eat first? Yes. Yes. Yes, you can. My belly felt ready to chew itself to death if I didn't do something soon. A basket full of your best onion, chive, and garlic bagels, plus a big pot of coffee. Let's go see this lounge. Darlene lifted the counter on one side of the bar and held it open for me as I called over my partner and driver, who'd begun inspecting the truly awful art on the walls, while we slid through and into the shop storage area. Okay. You know what I didn't do? I'm going to have to fix that right now. I didn't get a fact of the day. What if I know more about that? Okay. You know what? This is actually really cool. Oh, no, I always post these as... Okay. The on this day in history is something that I do on my blog just to amuse myself because I'm not the biggest history buff, but there are some really cool facts about the past out there. And they happen all the time throughout all the years. Woot. Okay. I just got my deposit. I need to take care of something right now. Yeah. Okay. I see that. Yep. Let's log in. Okay. So we're gonna transfer. Yeah, I know. Okay. You are gonna be 29 seconds. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't care. Okay. So oh, oh yeah. We get 2 books. Yeah. Okay. And then there's that. Okay. I am done making purchases. Yep. Oh, I do need to go. Go to Audible. To my library. There's Pern. Okay, so you're just not going. Okay. I'll add it later. Alright, so I get paid, and the first thing I do is pay my bills, or I don't have any bills right now, so I take care of some other things. And this is about where I realized that my mic wasn't working. And had I had my Twitch studio up, I would have noticed that the red tag wasn't, or my little voice tag wasn't moving. So really shame on me that I went so long without talking. But here you go. The poorly lit halls weren't deep, but even so, it was sad to leave the coffee's house main shop floor and its raft of delightful smells. It was the closest thing to a homey environment I encountered since toppling off my bed to discover my apartment had been stripped of its character by a maniacally crossed, cleaning obsessed tabby. We followed Darley's chubby rear end through the hall and I began to hear raised voices coming back from somewhere up ahead. Soon I was able to discern it wasn't really multiple voices, it was just one voice, and it seemed to be arguing with itself. No, you stupid bird! You stupid bird! You're not listening. We can't eat their liver, or they're gonna talk us in the clink.
But I want a pate with a bit of honey kitty. Can we have honey kitty? Sorry.
Okay, that's gonna be a problem. You fool! They don't serve kidney with liver. Now be silent. I hear someone coming. Stopping in front of my 3 companions, I thought out a long, expired sigh and flipped my coat off my rear hip, glaring at my kitty part. Well, I thought was either being extremely stubborn or we were reasonably safe. While my kitty Mark and I had disagreements in the past, most often when I really wanted to shoot somebody who'd cut me off in traffic, it didn't often let me walk into a situation with dangerous lunatics without at least a heads up. I noticed Scarlet was staring at my flank intently as I was, so I flipped the coat back over my butt. Hardy? Taxi murmured, sensing my concern. I think we're okay. Stella is looking out for number one. Do you want to bank on his self-interest, meaning we've got useful volunteers for this insane mission? I asked, as Darling waited a bit further down the hall. The door which she was leading us to was at the end, with hand lettering signs that said Employee Lounge on a bit of cardboard. I would. She shrugged her saddlebags higher on her thighs. Lifting her hoof, she spit in it and then held it my way. If he thought we were incompetent or incapable, he'd have found someone beside you to handle this. As is, I get the impression he likes to use minimum necessary force whenever he can, and he does seem to be a good judge of what minimum necessary is. I thought about this. Fine, you're not wrong. For now. But I'm not betting against the Serbia. I think I'd like to end up poor very quickly if I did. I gently pushed the proffered leg aside. Though if my liver ends up on a pate, it's your fault, sweets. I strode up after Darling, trying to radiate self-confidence I really didn't feel. No reason to let our little squad think we were anything less than absolutely assured of our victory. Then the coffee owner pushed open the lounge door opened, and a flying chromatic mug hit me squarely between the eyes. YouTube. Okay. Okay. Oh my god, that was adorable. Okay, so coffee mug to the face. This is what I want. Alright, I probably need to look up a gift, but yeah, let's look up the GIF. Okay, so GIF. Okay, let's do throne. Okay, I want to see this one. It's just cute. Okay. Yes, that. It's not quite right. I want more in your face. Uh, Copy image address. Select. Okay, so plastering at yo. Okay, yeah, that's just not gonna work. What is this? What? Okay, that's cute, but no. Alright. Alright. Pain. Speaking of pain. Fuck, that hurts. Pain is useful. In my job, I've often experienced pain, and therefore I've become familiar with its various flavors. There's the pain of watching a rich jerk walk out of a courtroom after you had him dead to rights because his lawyer found a procedural loophole. There's the pain of being flying through a plate glass window by a prescription drug abusing unicorn. There's the pain of losing a partner. Pain tells you you're alive and that your circumstances has become hold on. Pain tells you that you're alive and that your circumstances has just become exciting. Oh man. Oh, that's great. My exciting circumstance just then was what been pegged was that I'd been pegged to me in the okay. Found a typo, and I'm pretty quick to call him out. Um, okay. I'm gonna read this how I think it should be read, and I'm sorry. Uh, I I have been given Chessie's blessing to read this however I want. Um, Chessie's just happy that I'm enjoying it enough that I want to share it. Anyways, my exciting circumstances just then was that I'd been pegged in the face with an especially solid saving the world one bit at a time charity coffee cup. I was in pain, sitting on the floor, holding my forehead with both hooves. With all the airs of confidence gone, and the only thinking keeping the only thing keeping me from trying to shoot someone was that I'd forgotten to reload my gun when I got in the car. The dizzying, as the dizzying spell of the room slowed, I could finally see my attacker, having spent years around I'm going to call him Skies. I like calling him Skies. Skies and his ilk had taken for granted that the huge size was a generic side benefit of being a griffin. This, as it turns out, was untrue. The Snow White Bee, standing on the coffee table with her cup, with a cup curled in her claw, and a second one curled in her tail, ready to throw, was tiny even by pony standards. Her fluffy mane gave her enough height to be technically taller than Swift, but not by much. Every inch of her body from the neck to every inch of her body from the neck back was wrapped with enough whips to make her a walking advertisement for sadism. The various handled bobbles like wind chimes. The various handles bob like wind chimes with every movement. Edna, look at what you've done, Darlene scolded, shoving the little griffin off his table. She squawked like a squeaked chicken and flopped onto the carpet, struggling up as the coffee shop owner tore the mugs away from her and set them back on the sideboard underneath. If you want to make a mess in the Vivi, knock yourself out, but this is my place, and you are not a top, you are not a dom, and you do not get to break the cookware. Okay, sorry, I want to...
You can't do anything to me. I'm invincible.
Edna shrieked, tearing her cat o' nine tails from around her neck and brandishing them threatening. Her wings rose and her voice shifted into a screechy wail that somehow fit more feeling than it should. Okay, I'm just gonna read whatever one and I'm gonna apply the cute Edna voice to whichever one I feel like until I get a pattern of which voice would say which. This is not an audiobook. I'm not trying to pretend to be an audiobook. Otherwise, I'd go to Chessie or I'd sit down and write down exactly which one would get what. This is me having fun, and oh, hey, look, I have this voice changer. Yeah, she's right. You can't touch us. From somewhere in the darkened back corner of the small room, a light ball of light blue yarn sailed out and bounced across the carpet in front of the griffin. Okay. Ball of yarn tingling. Okay. Ball of yarn tingling. Alright, so we're just gonna do of light blue yarn bouncing. I would like a gift, please. Or, oh, instead of bouncing, let's do sure. Yeah, no, let me put those. Okay, we're actually gonna go to this one. We're gonna go to this one. This one's better. Copy image address, please. Here we go. Pretty sure it's G-Way. Okay, so it is I. Alright. I don't like. Okay, so this is where Edna trains in. And if that's not how you say her name, I don't really care. That's how I'm gonna say her name. Yeah, she's right. You can't touch us. From somewhere in the somewhere in the dark and black back corner of the small room, a ball of light blue yarn sailed out and bounced across the carpet in front of the griffin. Now, it should be said there are a few impulses remaining in the equine hindbrain that I find genuinely embarrassing. I never liked thunder all that much, and I hated going to the farrier since I was a foal. But after seeing Edna react to the bouncing ball of string, I count myself momentarily lucky that I wasn't even a little bit cat. The Griffin's pupil dilated until they almost filled her eyes, and then she was off, rolling head over tail, yarn in her beak, flapping back and forth on her back. It was a gruesome sight as the mighty hunter tore her prey until she was so tangled up all she could do was wiggle her toes and chirp helplessly at us. A cold, soft voice spoke beside me. Edna, you really must control your feline half, or she's gonna get you in trouble. I chirped back in alarm, my head spun, and I almost tripped off my hooves, catching myself on the door. The source of the voice was a zebra mare who was very suddenly beside me, sitting just over my shoulder. My driver, who is a pony normally known for the strict observation of everything around her, let out a very untaxi-like squeal and rose into her fighting stance. Swift was teething her gun bit, apparently not having gotten over the shock of seeing me brought down by a mug. We can only be grateful that her safety was still on, which prevented her from blowing a considerable hole in the creature I presume to be Mrs. Sandra. You know, it's a TV trope. She was odd even by zebra standards. Her mane was cut to a standard short, tight mohawk, but instead of the traditional tribal bangles or tattoos, she wore an elaborate dress made of coils of thin, fibrous rope layered one on top of the other. Each length of rope is attached to a snapping button for easy removal. Some to her vest, her hooves were wrapped in odd, tightly woven shoes, whose bottom looks to be some kind of fabric. I blinked and she was gone, vanished like a whisper of smoke in high wind. Scarlet was just standing back with a pleased and slightly smug smile, watching the proceeding. Taxi's ears flattened against her head as she started to relax, and then she let out a shrill yelp as Zetta reappeared beside her and said matter of factly, Your form is excellent, Pony, but you must place your rear hoof slightly farther forward or you're going to lose your balance on the return kick. Lightning isn't that fast, and it is definitely not that quiet. My driver self-consciously moved her rear leg a few inches and then dropped back on all fours as she tried to tame her breathing. She muttered something in zebra, as she often did when whatever she had dancing around her tongue was likely to cause stress in friendships. Zetta's eyes widened, and she said something back in the strange flowing language. Taxi raised one eyebrow, and then tentatively lifting her front leg, she stripped the striped mare, bent forward, and put her forehead against it briefly, then stepped back and raised her own foot. Lowering her head, my driver rested it against the tip of Zetta's toe, and a wide smile broke out across the zebra's face. Pony! You have been to the zebra lands, almost bouncing on her front legs. Taxi looked embarrassed, and an impression aided when she lowered her two-tone tail to the floor. Actually, I just spent some time in a zebra commune a few years ago. I learned the language from a mare named I am not even going to try to say that. Yay, y'all are home! Y'all, come on! You said it wrong. Okay, my tooth was killing me, so I bundled Corwin up when I left and took him to Burger King when I picked up Z from the food. I have one burger, I don't know, a Whopper. I don't know if it's the Impossible Whopper or the regular Whopper. None of the kids knew the difference between the Impossible meat and the regular meat. Uh, I did that intentionally. Like I fed them each, and when I told Corwin that he wasn't eating meat, I just gave him a small piece. He just kind of fell over to the side. It was really cute. And Z just kind of gave me a look like, what? And Jillian happily took a bite. And then later, when his food, because apparently they didn't give me his sandwiches, and I didn't know it till I got home, and I wasn't going to go out and get it, so I ordered him. And so when he was complaining, I still had half a sandwich. And I'm like, well, if you like that Impossible, you can have. And he was already eating what was left. So there's one burger left. And I don't know which one it is because I told him I don't care. Just put one in the fridge. They they taste almost exactly alike. The people who made Impossible Meat did their best to make it look, feel, taste. Even like if you grill the meat, it it drizzles like it has fat. Like they did what they could to make it real meat. Oh, trust me, I've had a lot of meat substitutes. mother was one of the first zebra immigrants. She still rhymed every other sentence. Nodding sagely, Zeta quirked her mouth and gave a private hint. Yes, yes, her mother is quite the piece of work. Your friend is one of my cousins. I'm glad she abandoned her mother's habit. It makes conversations in Asquarian very awkward. She's spreading her forelegs wide. She rose up on her rear ones and bowed her head. I name you friend. You may call me by my trade name, Zeta. I am Taxi, tribe name Shine, she replied, mirroring the gesture, and I name you friend as well. Turning, Taxi pulled me forward with one of her legs for introduction, while I still rubbed my still aching head. This rude ass is Detective Hardy. Please pardon him if he's too thick to perform the greeting rituals. The uniform is Officer Swift. My partner bobbed her head with and cracked a small smile. She is still learning diplomacy. Zeta looked me up and down and then studied Swift for a second before turning back. Most appreciative of your meeting of you and your partner, Detective. Stella has spoken highly. I do wish to apologize on the behalf of my coworker. She inclined her nose in the direction of the trussed-up Griffin, who was still wreathing on the carpet. She is very confident, but often of two minds, neither of which respond well to caffeine. She gestured to the half-emptied coffee brewers sitting on the sideboard. The little Griffin, seeing her private addiction, attempted to claw her way in the direction of the pot, although some weak scrabbling at the carpet was all she could manage, still tied up. She tried to screech a furious defilement, but with the yarn wrapped tightly around her beak, it came out as a sort of pissed off honk. Hold on. When I looked back to where Zeta was standing, she disappeared again, reappearing on the couch some time between blinks. With the magazine in her hooves and the coffee pot on the cushion beside her, I peered over at Taxi, and my teeth hurt with the effort not to laugh. Her muscle was set in a determined frown as she tried in vain to track whatever moves the zebra had just used. She wasn't getting anywhere, and who could blame her? Said it was spooky fast. I need to look something up. Is an impossible yet. Okay. Oh crap. Okay, no. Uh, I, shit. Okay. Shit. I need. I need to know. Yeah. The image address. I need you. All right. Can I? Okay, here we go. Okay, you're not helping. Okay. we go. Okay, never mind. Okay. So that. Okay, that's Impossible Burger. That's. I know you're allergic to some, not all. That's why I sent it to you. Uh, okay. There we go. I think it's you. Okay, ingredients. No, it went. Okay, I need this. I need the. You're not right. One more. Alright, so that's my little side bit. Okay. Hey. Alright. I was going to ask where the Tortellini twins were when a noise like a small herd of elephants romping down the hall sent Scarlet and Swift scattering out of the doorway. The two beings who came in after them stopped in the door. Their mere presence made the entire room feel smaller by half. They were unicorns only by the virtue of having 4 legs, a horn, and cutie marks. Anything resembling a crime form ended there. Edna might have been insane and Zebra and Zeta unsettling, but those two were just plain scary. Both of them wore full body hoofball uniforms, including face and closing helmets, with the Detrot manicore emblazoned on the side. At first, I thought they were wearing some type of pelt suit with weird texture underneath the outfits, but upon closer inspection, I realized that they were covered in thick layer of stomach-churning scars. Every inch of their body, from the back of their eyelids to the top of their rust-colored hooves, was a mass of puffy pink lines, like of which one could only receive from prolonged and very thorough torture. Some were newer than the others, some were where tufts of fur did grow. They were grassy green. Just looking at the two of them made me ache. Their horns jutted up through their helmets in 2 good inches each, in total defiance of every hoofball safety rule I'd ever heard of. But since I hadn't heard of any recent impalement on the field, I assumed they had a method. Peering around their sides against my better judgment, I fixed my eyes at their cutie marks, which turned to be relatively innocuous: a pot of boiling water and an oven. Oh my. Okay, so I want to see, can I get MLP unicorn wearing helmets? Okay, it's gonna be under images. Okay, I like this one. So we're gonna do copy image address, but I think I just saw something that might work better. Okay, that's really cute. Okay, now let's use this one. And actually, I want to use this one because it's transparent and it's one of those. Well, let's see. Copy image from address. URL. It works. You do not get to take up that much of my screen. No way. Okay. Sorry. I want this picture. I'm gonna download this picture because this picture is just adorable. Oh yeah. Soft spot. Okay. Scarlet, the one on the left, rumbled. His giant Italian voice sounded like he had an industrial query in his throat. We come when called. Where's the pain you promised us? Scarlet gulped audibly and sweat popped out of his forehead. Pain is coming, boys. Detective, these are the Tornelleri twins. He nodded to one on the left, and then his brother. Bacon Boyle. Boys, this is Detective Hardy. He's going to be directing things. The two stallions lifted their eyebrows in close unison, giving me a skeptical one over. He's so puny, Bake said, holding his hoof at chef height, which came just above my head. I could break him with my face, Boyle replied, tilting his helmet back to show me a slightly fatter spot just below his spine. What pain will you give us, little stallion? Bake, Boyle, Zeta. There was a moment silent, punctuated only by the soft rustle of the girlfriend on too many stimulants, trying to untie her leg from the side of her own head. Policing, in my experience, is all about finding what motivates people. I long ago discovered that motivations, for most, are relatively simple, but now and then one runs across an individual or a group of individuals whose needs are completely foreign. In those instances, what makes a good cop is whether or not he can adjust to a given situation fast enough to take advantage of an opportunity. I am a good cop. Way to be modest there, Hardy. I casually adjusted my tie, smoothing it in the motion that allows my gambit and badge to swing between my front knees. As I guessed, the two sets of piercing green eyes followed the dangling bed, stepping between them. I pulled my forelegs around their neck and drawing their heads together as I lowered my voice to a whisper. Gentle goats, the pain I will give you lies within a drug facility in a magically contaminated hellhole guarded by some of the most dangerous, heavily armed monsters the city has ever seen. Your two bodies may be all that's between us and and flying lead, crushing hooves, and whatever unspeakable damages the arcane can dream of. I stepped back, holding my hooves wide as I gave him my fiercest grin. You two want pain? I'll throw you right into the dragon's teeth. The room's reaction to my theoretics was focused silence. The twins themselves simply stared at me in stoic complimation, while Taxi was pretending to be engrossed in the ceiling tiles. Swift just watched intently, with one of those uncomprehending looks she was going to be famous for if she wasn't careful. Even Edna, sensing the tension in the air, stopped struggling with the snarl of yarn long enough to look up and watch. At last, the twins seemed to appear to reach a decision. They straightened to their full height and then lowered their helmet heads to the floor, leaving their rear ends in the air. It took me a second to realize the gesture for what it was: total submission. They replied in perfect synchronization in voices that could grind stones. We will have your pain. I should probably have thrown an echo on, but I'm not gonna fight that. Thus, since meeting the best stilettos had to offer, I've been startled, assaulted, insulted. It was indicative of the last few days of my life that I considered two enormous scarified hoofballers offering themselves to me for physical abuse, only a mild aberration. The nap had mellowed me a bit, however, so using their scrotums for bucking bags was less appealing than it might have been earlier in the day. Instead, I gave them my best approving nod and then turned to Darling Brew, who'd been standing quietly outside. How about them bagels? Per Mistress Zeta's warning, we waited to free Edna until the proprietor returned with refreshments. Unlike our briefing at the Vivi, the more relaxed atmosphere of Darling did lend itself to sitting down with coffee, or in Edna's case, a flask of booze and calming herbs that Zeta had nearly forced down her throat. Whatever magical chemical was in that stuff calmed the girlfriend enough for us to cut her loose. Sadly, it did not stop what seemed to be going. This seemed to be an ongoing argument.
Detective is meat. You don't work with meat.
You work with me all the time, you silly flapping Nilly.
Yes, well, we don't have to be happy about it.
Zeta had the griffin propped up on the couch cushions and was gently cutting the last of the yarn out of her white leg feathers while the rest of us were gathered around the coffee table devouring mounds of bagels and other pastries on the plastic tray. The tortinas had, for some reason I prefer not to compliment, elected to sit on the floor at my hooves while Scarlett curled up beside me, giving them slightly jealous looks now and then. Taxi was nibbling on a piece of fresh toast with one of her amused smiles, watching my discomfort as though etching it into her memory. Swift, meanwhile, had managed to get cream cheese in her feathers. The zebra mare let out a long, suffering sigh as she plucked another piece of string from between her co-worker's talons. Edna was still grumbling at herself as she snatched up a croissant and began tearing it to pieces and getting crumbs in her chest feathers. She seemed to have sunk into her own mind and was barely reacting to the presence of others being in the room. Swift was ripping into her second pastry as I finished my third, and after setting the last bite back on her plate, she gave voice to a question that was on all of our minds. Miss Zeta? Miss Zeta, what is wrong with her? Neither the zebra nor the griffin considered this a fox pass, as it might have been. Zeta had been anticipating the question and reacted no more strongly than to run her hoofs affectionately down Edna's neck. Most take for granted that two animals can magically coexist within one body without there being issues. She turned to Edna's snowy feathers up to hers, and the griffin simply continued to chew, her eyes entirely in focus. In most griffins, those take the form of cravings. In her, it distinguishes in personalities. You ponies call it moon touch when the male fails to agree with the bodies. You ponies call it moon touched when a mind fails to agree with the body upon what is real. Yes? Okay. So I know that's a proper name, it's just not capitalized. Okay. So okay. So why isn't she in the hospital? Taxi asked, sweeping the cream off her lower lip with her tongue. She probably would benefit from therapy. What would therapy give her? A doctor telling her she's mad? She knows that. Drugs? She would not be Edna then. Her clients accept her as she is. They would miss her. Edna lifted her head and her eyes centered on me. They were sapphire blue, cool as winter morning. Against my breast, Cosmo's heart began to pound against the side of the box like it was tempting to escape. We watched one another for some time, and I slowly got the oddest sensation of being an animal trapped behind a glass, being watched by a child on a parent's leash. I understood I understood my course made no less binding. I was about to walk into the depths of a heavily enchanted bastion of criminality to face an unknown number of opponents with only a small circle of volunteers at my back. Her psychosis meant she did what she pleased, even when that meant to follow a mad pony like me to nearly certain death. You know, I envied her just a little bit. That's it then? You just let her be like that? Taxi sounded slightly offended by the idea, though I couldn't say why. She fights for the Vivi, Zeta answered, lowering her chin onto one of the throw pedals. Like Minnie there, she's only safe within the confines of Miss Stella's protections. Otherwise, I'm certain she'd be locked away, and her skills, nay, her very being, would be wasted on the attempt to fix her. So why this mission? Zeta chewed her tongue self-consciously before she replied, Edna volunteers for every mission. Safe words don't matter. Like, safe words don't matter in a combat situation. Damn it. Here we go. Hey. I can't spell Eeyore. Oops. You think I would be able to spell Eeyore? I've had numerous shirts. I have one night shirt that I wear all the freaking time with Eeyore on it, but I just don't think about it. For a while, the seven of us sat with our cups and munched on heaps of excellent pastries. I had I had the thought that my job might be a whole lot more pleasant if I worked with prostitutes all the time. At the very least, I'd eat better. When we were down to patting full bellies and slurping the dregs from the bottom of the coffee cups, Taxi pulled open her saddlebags and spilled a heap of rolled up paper across the table. Okay, so while Hardy was asleep, I went by the castle and spoke to city planning office. She told us, checking the numbers in each corner of the rolls until she found the one she was looking for. Unfolding it across the table, she used two coffee cups to hold down the top and bottom edges. It was blueprints of some large single-story building. This is the Sunny Days foster home. I'm afraid I couldn't get plans from any time in the last 10 years before it was closed, so these are a little out of date. Those files were removed from city archives. I'm betting some bits changed hopes to make that happen. Yeah, if Cosmo is running an industrial level drug operations, I doubt he's leaving essential information in the hubs of the police department. I groused, rubbing the bridge of my nose. I would have thought a half decent map wouldn't be too much to ask, though. You want a half decent map? You give me a half decent planning department. You give me a half decent planning department. I flirted with the receptionist Philly for 15 minutes just to get these. The cabbie slapped the paper on uh, the back of her hoof in irritation. As it is, all she could tell me was there was additional construction, and there's not even a record of what sort of contamination is in there other than the estimate cleanup bill of something like twice the cost of rebuilding elsewhere. So scouting then. Zeta, you're it. I nodded towards the zebra. We need entrances, exits, number of guards. If you can possibly route an entry, think you can handle that? Zeta claps her hips together excitedly, which didn't make any noise with those special shoes, but the sentiment was there. Oh, I will be the eyes. I am most proficient. Swift raised her knee for attention. Sir, what about the ladybugs? Oh, eyes turned on me. What about them? I asked, one ear tilting towards the rookie. If my last look at what they were up to is anything to go by, they're sitting in my apartment messing with the radio, reading my case files. By now, they get nosy. It's part of the price of doing business with them. I told you we can't use them for advanced scouting. We know the building is dangerous. The Pegasus scratched her neck, thinking, which smeared more cream into her throat for her. Couldn't we? I don't know. Couldn't we have Miss Zeta wear one? Yes. What are these ladybugs the little one speaks of? Zeta wanted to know. Deciding showing was better than telling, I patted my mane until I found one of the several tiny lumps still lurking just behind my ear and wiggled it free. The insect had taken the color of my pelt and most likely out of instinct rather than necessary. It was whirring quietly to itself, fast asleep. Oi, wake up. I gave the bug a little shake, and it lifted its head, opened its jeweled eyes, giving its wings a quick buzz. We've got a drug den that is extremely nasty in the magical infected environment, and what might be a very lethal group of monsters guarding it. We need to destroy all of it whilst probably outnumbered and outgunned. UN. The SE left off a piercing whistle and exploded into the air, doing a series of loops before settling back down on my hoof. I take that as a yes then. When we leave here, you make sure one of your little friends is on every pony or is on every one in this room. Got it? The creature turned a circle, taking in all the faces before buzzing back to me and tilting backwards and forwards and imitating a nod. Excellent. You are riding the stripes. Turning to the zebra, I held out the bag. Think of it as a camera that will pee in your mane if you leave it on too long. Just keep it on you and we'll be able to see every move. Shuffling forward, Zebra sniffed a little creature. It's a pear sprite? She did a quick walk backwards into the wall and slid to the floor. No, just smells like one. Their breeding restricted by their enchantment and their autonomy contract. Go on. I encouraged flipping the SC off my toe. The ladybug aligned in the zebra's mane, wiggling down amongst the spiky black and white fur on her back of her neck. She touched back there to touch the spot and then thought better. Or she reached back there to touch the spot and then thought better of it. You police ponies have some most interesting equipment, said muttered. Yeah, tell me about it. I replied, and turning back to the bruised plants, tracing one tracing the spaces one at a time. I see two options here for our drug lab, the cafeteria or the auditorium. What do you mean? Could he just use a classroom? Scarlet asked, pointing to the row of empty rooms. If somebody wanted to be inconspicuous. How about I take this over here? No. Oh, definitely not. I saw that up. Inconspicuous. Ugh. Yeah, okay. That would be best, right? Best time for a small time operation, sure, but a big one? No. Not, that's about efficiency. Or best for a small time operation? Sure, but for a big one? Nah. That's about efficiency. Actually pointed out, remember, King Cosmo hasn't been worried about inconspicuous up to this point. That school is his. His version of inconspicuous is making sure nobody's checking in on it. Spread a few bits around the school system, toss some at the police department, good old cult network, and he's got nothing to worry about. Nobody so much as goes to look, which means he'll use the largest possible space with the best ventilation system. My money is on the auditorium. There are 4 easy exits, plus it backs up to the road on the far side. I pointed at my partner, who popped to attention. Swift. Zeta will point out the guards up high. You need to take down any she can't immediately reach. I doubt they'll have more than a lookout. Do it quietly if you can. No shooting. Pegasus rose on the tip of her toes, chest first standing up. You can count on me, sir. I've got an idea for an approach already. Oh, man. Fine. I waved towards the zebra mane with the ladybug head. Everyone gets a bug. So if you can't handle what's up there on yourself, order them to give this signal to me or Zeta to exist. I have little doubt things are going to get loud, but I want us to have an advantageous positions by the time they do. I looked over at the Tortini, the twins, and Edna. You thought, I assume, are for when things do get loud. The twins covered their muzzles with one huff and chuckled heartily before Boyle reported, bullet sting. Their horns began to glow a mint green. Shine crept over the unicorn's body until he glittered like a cut diamond and shimmering field sank into his skin. Oh, let me do it! Oh, let me do it! Edna screeched, leaping up and uncurling 2 of her whips from her wings. They were an especially vicious looking pair, covered the bits of metal and tipped with a twist of barbed wire at the lead weight. Before anyone could stop her, she swung them both back and almost clipping my nose off, and then brought the lashes down across Boyle's face. I cringed backwards, expecting a spray of blood, and the sound of crushing bone. The lead weight should have shattered a good chunk of the stallion's cheek. Instead, a noise like a shimmering bell rang through the lounge. The loud whip left a thin cut across the top 5 layers of skin before it stopped like it hit a brick wall and dropped to the rug. The stallion wiggled his nose and wiped a bit of blood on the back of one of his fetlocks. Swift, in fact, reacted far worse than the wound than her. What? Why wouldn't you just leave the force field outside your skin? She said, cringing. Boyle looked at her blankly, as though she just asked it what music they like. What fun would that be? Trying to recover my own composure, I dusted my perfectly clean coat with my toe and said, right, bulletproof. Lovely. You're on point then. How good is that spell? Bake lifted a heavily padded shoulders and lifted them up. Don't like getting hit in the eyes. and you'll like being shot in them less. I snatched up a pin from the table, drawing a line through the maze to the auditorium. Moving back along that route some distance, I found what I was looking for. Here. This is the entry point for the ground pounders. This gym has an exterior and an interior entrance to locker rooms. It's underground and off the Lakely patrol lots. There's a maintenance tunnel that runs back behind the gym teacher's office through the boiler room and comes up in what I'm guessing is a closet off of room 103. There's a couple of windows that the external scout should be able to get in through. We group here before we hit the auditorium. If anybody doesn't know or an alarm goes up, then we'll know we're coming. And we'll have the ladybugs call Scarlet. Secretary sat up straight on his name, listening attentively. He'll call the castle and tell them there's a hydra nest or a swarm of parasprites or maybe a mood bomb, whatever, doesn't matter. Something to make them jump. Sir? I thought we were trying not to involve the rest. Fuck. Okay. Sorry. Thought we were trying not to involve the police department in this. Taxi gave me a concerning expression. Yeah, I'm with Swift on this one. It's not like we'll be able to call the cops on them and then mysteriously disappear. You know the standard operating procedure in an emergency raid situation. They'll stop flight traffic, block the roads, set up a series of shields and alert spells all over the whole area, and we won't be able to sneak out. Even the flyers won't be able to leave. So why tip off? Because if things go all parasprite shaped, I explained, our highest priority will be to keep the recordings from leaving we're leaving where we can't trace them. If we tell them about the situation that requires them to bring out the riot squad, then they should be able to prevent anyone or anything from leaving the area, such as, say, certain blackmail recordings from inside a whorehouse. Okay, so I need to look up street names. Okay. Okay, now that's okay. So I'm gonna do that instead. So we're going to the uh it's called Sunny. Yep. And we're gonna add Wait, is that Christina Lane? Oh, sir, that's a packed police department, Pegasus Station House at 300 feet above sea level, less than a mile from there. She proceeded. I know, I trained there. Response time is less than 8 minutes last year. They'll have that building surrounded before you could get out of the detection perimeter. I lifted one of the last bagels in my half tub and peering at it for a while, which is what we want. If it comes down to that, we hope Stella or one of her agents can get the recordings from the evidence before Cosmo does. I won't have any of you die here if it can be avoided. Any point he doesn't show, we ditch. No sense in walking to a meat grinder. I bit this out of the bagel, chewing the deliciously doughy perfection, and added as an afterthought, explaining why I'm in a drug den in the company of a bunch of ninja prostitutes will probably mean my job, so let's keep it at a last resort. Fitting 7 creatures into the Night Trotter involved a more intimate experience of my companions than I was hoping for. At one point, said I volunteered to ride on the roof if necessary, but by moving the front seat forward a few inches and putting Edna on the floor with another ball of yarn to keep her indigent squalling to a minimum, letting Swift spill halfway across my back and half across Scarlett's, we were able to get everyone in. The engine turned and we were off. Bake sat beside Taxi, eyeing her horribly scarred flank with intense interest. After some minutes, she noticed his gaze and shuffled her saddlebags up to cover her rear end. Rather than take offense, he gave her a broad, if extremely ugly, grin. Rather than risk conversation with him, she raised her voice and asked, Hey, Hardy, what's the plan assuming we pull this insanity off? Plan? Cosmo volunteers for Tartarus or he leaves the country for the rest of his life. I'm afraid I haven't put much thought past that. Goody! I want to raise once this is done. You want to back out? You can always go take a lab at Lunicap. Oh, yay! It's been a while since I really had. Lunicab. Company. Who's Did I do this one right? Yes. Okay. Nah, I'd have to handle actual passengers then. None of irritation and introverts. I wouldn't be able to punch any of them if they got it in the crotch. I wouldn't be able to punch any of them in the crotch if they don't stop staring at my ass. Boyle's cheek flared bright red as his brother smacked him on the back of the head. I'm sorry? The big hoof pile apologized, fixing his helmet. Most interesting scars I've ever seen. Very pretty. Never seen a cutie mark not grow back before. Keep your eyes to yourself, kiddo. I might be half your size, but I'll find a way to make you hurt that you won't like. Oh, I'd give you a coupon if you want to try one day, pretty lady. My driver looked ready to plow us into a fire hydrant, and I hurriedly changed subject. Could we swing by requisition while we're on the way? I don't think my revolver's gonna cut it in there. Taxi waved a hoof at her rear seats, indicating the trunk. I went while you were sleeping. There's extra firepower. There's extra firepower for you and a vest. I managed to find a couple of clips for Massime. A little smile touched her lips, and plus a little something I scrounged together for myself, she added in a much lower voice. What? I barked and tried to leap to my host, jostling Swift, who nearly pitched over the top of Edna and wound up bodily on the floor. Hey, I followed your guidelines. Nothing lethal. My back was starting to ache from having my partner's neck pressed into my vertebrae with the constant motion of the car grinding them together, and I wasn't in the mood to argue. Fine. What about the chief? I asked, poking my head up to see exactly where we were. There wasn't much to see. The evening was coming on quick, and the night would soon fall. The weather factories were still running, but they must have been working on a shipment of rain clouds because it was still dry out. I assume you couldn't avoid a report. Oh, I avoided the report just fine. Swift's report has us gallivanting off, hunting some cabin outside the city. Jane Pony might have stayed there. It's off packed patrol routes. Hence the weaponry. I assume you were using the may have stayed there in the cosmic, since I may have one day breathed the same air as the Princess Celestia. Yes, sir? Good kid. Okay. During the boom years, Detrot was a center of not only industry but education. Do I have? I think I have the arcane. You know what? There's a fast forward to check. No, I don't. The Arcane Academy decided to make its home here instead of Manhattan or one of the other cities most likely to host a grand university. While it may have regretted its decision in the following years, at the time it seemed like a brilliant idea. We were at the heart of the innovation for the war effort and the greatest defense bastion against the dragons. The name Detrot meant something as a point of culture and development. Ponies back then understood the essential truth that their children were their only hopes for a grand future. Those children had the oppu- oppor- opportunities that were envied across the whole of the world. Those were the good years. The Sunny Days juvenile foster care was a heads up Cardavier's contract, full of desiccant dreams. They were tasked with making sure that even the least among them, the orphan vows of the dead miners, city workers, and soldiers lost in the Crusades, would have an education and a home. They failed. Had it been abandoned because of a collapse of economy or because it was no longer needed, then letting it sit follow might have been reasonably justified as a monument to a great experiment. The sudden magical contamination had all the poetry being pasted by a bus while crossing the street. It reminded ponies just a bit too much of their own extremely potent mortality, and the supposed destinies granted by the cutie marks could still be wiped out in an instant if one failed to look both ways before crossing, and hence it was being shoved in one of the city's numerous back drawers, too difficult to explain and too depressing to eulogize. Stop the car, I ordered, waving one leg in the rearview mirror. What? Taxi pulled back on the throttle but didn't brake. We're still miles from the school. We're walking the rest of the way. She steered us to the curb. Seta needs time to get ahead and scout our approach. That, and I don't know if you've noticed or not, but a souped up hack isn't exactly a sneaky vehicle. Quiet, remember? The cabbie's expression grew full of apprehension, and then I knew something was off the rails. Quiet isn't a problem, is it? No, no, she stammered as she found 6 sets of eyes on her. We should get out now. Rather than fuss with opening the door, Swift just rolled down the back window, crawled out onto the pavement. Scarlet had to flop onto his back and then shimmy his hips down until he could roll forward, and I dragged myself out after them and found Zeta having somehow scrolled past me, already helping Taxi and Wedge Boyle from the passenger seat. Fitting in the front was a minor vehicle. Big, meanwhile, backed out and picked up Edna by the scruff of her neck, slinging her slightly over his shoulder like a sack of grain. In the growing darkness of mid-evening, I looked over the skyline, trying to see exactly where we pulled up. Taxi was always making my sense of direction and location, and I often had to trust that she brought me within throwing distance of wherever I needed to be. We seemed to be in some kind of industrial park. The surrounding buildings were nondescript, boxy warehouses built by architects interested in city beautification. Their sole aesthetic virtue was that they radiated purpose, but there was little else. Smokestacks, silence until the morrow, bit into the starry horizon like deformed teeth. I shivered, despite the unreasonable warmth of the evening. The thick storm clouds directly overhead boiled. I need to sleep. Boiled and belched. Bet held their peace. Street lamp further up the road buzzed and then flickered on as it got dark enough for the bulb to decide we weren't getting enough of the bleak details on the empty street. I could still hear vibrantly active parts of the city in the distance. Out there, ponies were laughing, fighting, screwing, and living. But in the desolation hours of the manufacturing districts, with all the workers gone to the pub and hearth, the area around sunny days felt like it was in a lonely sleep and was waiting for the mercy of dawn. Lost deep in my introspection, it was some time before I noticed that all the others were watching me, waiting for orders. All right, sweets. Pop the trunk. Let's see what you got. With very telling hesitancy, Taxi reached under the steering wheel and hit the catch. The car's boot snapped open, and there was a sharp intake of breath all around. I resolved then and there, screw the death threat. I'm sending Rocky Resistance a cheesecake full of dynamite. And I resolved this because what my driver had scrounged together was a Mark V peace cannon. Usually, when PAC and the police department are forced to work together for any reason, there is considerable tension. While regular drilling against the chance to run into the rogue marauding dragon attack does tend to lend both groups the chance to let off some steam, nothing really manages to completely quell the upset caused by having two policing forces with overlapping jurisdiction. Despite this, there have been documented times in history where both agencies. Beside this, there have been times in history where both agencies where they had worked together brilliantly. One such instance happened during an especially bad run with the citywide unemployment, which included a speculation boom and bust of food stocks that left the prices of bread sky high. The police department was encouraged to find some means of dealing with civil unrest that didn't leave a lot of dead bodies for the evening news to turn into a morbid collage. At the castle's entire arsenal, as the castle's entire arsenal was already largely brought wholesale from the lower collateral section of the packed weapon catalog, it meant new research. And while we didn't have the labs for that, the eggheads at Pact were more than happy to throw their brains at coming up with non-lethal alternatives. Their Magnus opinion was a polite enjoiner against criminal enterprise. I'm gonna try to finish this. Actually, I'm not gonna be able to. Right, I'll be right back. just a moment. You can imagine I need to nibble on something. Just gotta update my app real quick. Sorry. Alright. Yes, please, I would like to record. Or not record. Confirm. Hefty. That's hefty. Wow. Okay. Come on, get my brain straight. Taxi hefted the huge blaster out of the trunk and slung its strap over around her neck, and grunting, she added the weight. The piece was a modified riot gun, almost a third of my driver's body length and size, with a barrel I could stick my whole hoof into. There was a bottom mounting for saddle fire, and added she god for the drum feed option rather than a fire clip. Weirdly, she kept the mounting along with the weapon to be fired by creatures with fingers, and simply tied a string around the trigger with the bit for her teeth. It was a gorgeous weapon, all things considered, and in the hopes of any other pony, I'd have been pleased to have along. A peace cannon? Are you out of your little yellow mind? I shouted, slamming my forehead against the side of the car. My driver lifted her nose and sniffed hotly. I've taken courses in this firearm, thank you very much, and I passed it with flying colors. You're just jealous. Who in Equestria let you the gun range long enough for you to take a training course? She rolled her eyes and patted the gun like an old friend. You remember that Pegasus mare I dated last year? Placid skies? Pack twit with a lisp. Yes, that's her, she acknowledged. She took me to the range. Her special talent is patience, something some of us, who shall not be named, could go with. Or who shall go unnamed. How did you even get that thing? Recreation likes me, apparently. My driver gave an imprudent little shrug. At first I told him it was for you, and they were, for some reason, very reluctant. And then I said it was for me, and they practically dumped it in my lap. And I've got all different kinds of ammo, too. Sorry, I'm not going to be very animated for the rest of the stream. I don't know if you can hear me, but, had a little episode, and I went from being mostly tired to very exhausted. Pushing the cabinet's empty case on one side, she dug out an entire carton of extra drums in all colors of the rainbow. Thanks to the idiosyncrasy of the ammo manufacturer, I didn't recognize any of them by name. But Tom's Revenge and Party Pooper both sounded like they were unpleasant things to be hit with. So, unfortunately, Taxi was already to stage where already to the stage where she was caressing the multi-chambered monster like it was a newborn. Wrestling it away from her would have required Dana's assistance or a short emergency room stay. More importantly, it would have also delayed us, and I wanted to get moving sooner rather than later. Damn. If you ever shoot me with this gun, accident or not, I'm shooting back. Ratcheting the action back, she did the drum marked Huss now under the barrel. And then stood up on her rear eggs, checking the safety. Understood, I promise. I'm a much better shot than I used to be. Just, let me go first, okay? Oh, by all means. I had dragged the cannon's box out and tossed it onto the curb, and then went back to the trunk. In spite of the high probability I was going to be fragged by my driver before the night was out, I couldn't fight the big grin spilling across my muzzle. Taxi knew me too well. Okay. A police issue Minotaur shotgun, reliable oldie but goodie of a weapon, sat there wrapped in cellophane along two boxes of mouth-loadable quick clips for earth ponies. Alongside them was a series of intricate straps plus a second trigger bit and a full chest black jacket. I dusted my coat, picking up the bulletproof vest and sticking my head through. I wrestled with the buckles until one of the Tortini twins fastened them in place using a burst of magic. The dark blue armor covered my chest and spine just above my tail, and then wrapped around my sides in places that wouldn't otherwise interfere with firing my gun. It wasn't perfect perfection, but it definitely wasn't, and it definitely wasn't comfortable. But I wouldn't be a walking bullet bait either. Turning back, I lifted the shotgun in my teeth and laid it along the curbside. Oh, sir, I want one. Schiff gushed. You can have one when you grow up, kid, I replied, winking at her. My partner stiffened and then gave her wing flap that blew air right at my tail. I'm so gonna get you for that, sir. I laughed, cradling the weapon to my chest with one foreleg and smiling gratefully at my driver. If I die tonight, sweets, I think I'll die happy. The cabbie just rolled her eyes and breathed on her hoofs. Mugly polished one side of her cannon's barrel. Your lady take good care of you, little stallion, Big commented, levitating the straps out of the trunk. Miss Zeta helped me attach extra belts to my gun harness, expertly wiggling the new holsters to make sure it was tight on my side as Boyle unwrapped the beauty itself. I turned so he could fit the shotgun stock into place and then sucked my breath as they connected my rear leg to the cartridge eject and adjusted it. Draping a second trigger around my neck, I picked up the shotgun's bit and tugged it until I heard the ear-pleasing click of safety. Finally, I stuffed several additional cartridges in my front pocket and swept my jacket back on. All right, Scarlet, Front Center, I barked. And Stella's secretary almost threw himself at my knees. Yes, detective. You're waiting in the car. Don't. Stereo or Taxi will use pressure points to make all the blood in your body flow backwards. He nodded and climbed into the back seat, incidentally curling up on my warm spot. Swift. My partner, who'd been checking her kit, was sitting her fresh clip in her vest and raised her head. I lifted my chin to sky, get up high, and find the school. Scout from as high as you can, and don't get sane. Wait for my signal and watch for Zeta. Tell your ladybug to have hers chirp. Tell your ladybug to have hers chirp at her if she's about to walk into something. Tell your ladybug to have hers chirp at her if she's about to walk into something she can't handle. If you feel a tingle, that's me watching you. 1 chirp for yes, 2 chirps for no, 3 chirps for wait, 4 for attack. You hear 1 continuous noise, and you get out. You pull back. You got me? Yes, sir! Swift splayed her wings and blew off the ground, a flash of orange, sailing off towards the rooftops, leaving behind a microburst that sent my mane flopping in my eyes. I let out a low breath and turned to face the darkened street. 7 against an unknown force, with only surprise to our advantage. 7 to save the lives of hundreds, maybe even thousands. Our fate had decreed the night that bled in mayhem. Thin air, flavored with the smoke from the smoldering forges, felt crisp as good wine and sweet as my mother's pie. I didn't need Taxi's intuition to tell me that death was racing down our necks. I could feel his rattling laughter in my bones as he toasted the 7 fools coming to meet him. It felt good. I inhaled deeply and savoring the aroma of the grim Wrangler scotch. Then pushed my chest out, grinned my maddest grin. We're ready. Cosmo won't know what hit him. Okay, that's a really cool name. Actually, we're just gonna call him Death. Yeah, that was dumb. Hardy. What is it, sweets? School's the other way. Right. And then I scroll down here. Okay, I'm gonna take off the headphones because I'm definitely not reading anymore tonight. I'm sorry, guys. I really wanted to try to push for another chapter. It's pretty early, 2 a.m. You know, I'd have time for one more chapter, but I just can't. Sorry. gonna get. Need open. Alright. Okay. Yeah.